Karen is from BusQ, which is the superannuation scheme for construction workers in Queensland up here, and some of the construction workers. And she's a claims officer. And BusQ, back in the 90s when superannuation became compulsory and redundancy funds started up, for the first time we had industry people sitting around boards. And of course with redundancy trusts and with superannuation schemes, one of the things that used to come across the board is the death certificate, because that's what gets paid out on. And for the first time, construction people were starting to see death certificates coming on a regular basis with cause of death, suicide. Now up to then we knew, if you've been in the industry you had a bit of a hunch that we had a few issues around that, but having evidence for it. We were really lucky, I think, in Queensland, because on the BusQ board that looked on the claims committee was Wally Trahair. Probably a little known fact to people, and certainly not to people in Western Australia or the Sydney Swans, but Wally was actually also the initiator of don't employ dickheads policies. Because I overheard him telling Jorgen one day at Mates in Construction, and whatever you do, don't employ a dickhead. But Wally was also on the claims committee, and he actually saw the death certificates, and without going into the whole story, it was through Wally's spot on the BusQ claims committee that led to the research that we got through the Griffith University into suicides in the Queensland construction industry. And I've got to say that that's where the genesis of Mates in Construction started. It was from the BusQ claims committee and what we saw, or what Wally saw. And Karen, who works for BusQ from a Queensland point of view, that they have been one of the greatest supporters from the beginning, and I think it's because that's where the genesis was. So there they give us funding, but they run lots of events and come onto sites with us, and it's been tremendous. So Karen's not going to come up here and give us some sort of academic treatise on suicide and whatever. Karen's going to come up and talk about the personal impact of suicide on a claims officer working for a superannuation fund. Let's welcome Karen.
I'd like to thank Mates in Construction. Thank you, Wally, for that. I really appreciate the opportunity to come share with you today. No, I don't have any slides. I'm going to speak from here. Okay? And I may have to refer to my notes on occasion, but I see I'm not the only one, so it should be okay. I'm here today to talk to you about the impact that suicide has on the families, the workmates, friends. It's a lasting effect. And today I've heard a few words mentioned. One of them's aftershock, the other's tsunami. And I think that about sums up the impact that it has on the families, those that are left behind. I have over 30 years experience in insurance, dealing with death in all types of circumstances. My current position at BusQ allows me to use that experience along with my assist training through Mates in Construction to be able to assist those families both in a death claim situation and with TPD claims with our members. BusQ pays out on death cover, and we handle those claims as quickly as possible because they're struggling both emotionally and financially. Dealing with this type of death for children, for a spouse, for friends, flatmates, workmates, as I said, has a lasting effect. And in many instances, as we've already heard today, those people also find themselves at risk. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to present to you some stories, 4 cases, and I must tell you ahead of time that some of the content's graphic. It may upset some of you. Some of you may even have to leave the room. And I'll understand that. Again, mates, if you need to have a chat with somebody, grab someone from mates, they'll be glad to talk to you. At BuzzQ, we get to know these people's stories. We hear their struggles. Many of these, we've already had a hands up about how many people have been affected by suicide. I'm one of those people. So I'm not exempt, but I have to listen to those struggles every day, and it breaks my heart. The following 4 cases I'm going to show to you are real cases. Wally may know some of them, but I'm not going to give you the names. The first case is a man aged 26 who died as a result of hanging. His father went to the mortuary to find his only son with a noose around his neck. The impact of that sight has affected every aspect of his life. He had a business. He's lost that business. He tried to go to work for another employer. Unfortunately, because of all the anger built up inside, he got into a fight with a workmate. His relationship with his wife suffers. He tried to take medication. That didn't really seem to help. He lives in a rural area, so counseling and support groups are few and far between. In May of 2013, he became at risk, and we put a SAFE plan in place. And for those of you in the room who are assist trained, tell me what this is. You use this, because I don't go anywhere without it. It's what I use to be able to keep someone safe. During this time, his emotional state was so bad that his wife had to put away ropes, knives, anything that he might use to harm himself. In January of 2014, we again had to put a second plan in place. He had stopped taking his medication. He wasn't able to go to work. And photos and comments on Facebook seemed to continually upset him. Case number 2, age 36, died as a result of hanging. The de facto found her husband hanging from the rafters in the downstairs rumpus. The mother of the deceased blamed her for the death. That's not unusual, folks. It is not unusual. It's sad that occurs, but it's not unusual. The entire family doesn't speak to her, so she feels completely isolated, in addition to trying to deal with overwhelming grief. She's angry, she's depressed, she's both mentally and physically spent. Her daughter, who was only 12, then attempted suicide. She blamed herself for her father's death. She had to declare bankruptcy because she wasn't able to make ends meet without the members' financial contribution to the family household. She ended up selling the home because she could no longer stand to be in the same house where he died. And then the final blow was that the brother of our member also died as a result of suicide. Case number 3 is a gentleman aged 39 died as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning. The family blamed the wife for the death. The son became at risk. The wife replayed that scene over and over and over again in her head, and I heard Sally say the same thing. She has replayed it over and over again. It doesn't matter whether you're there or not. She can't get that out of her head. She questions her own sanity. She can't sleep. She has difficulty making decisions, and she's lost her job. My last case, case number 4, age 44, died as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning. The wife was a counselor, a professional who dealt with phone calls from people who were at risk. She had the most incredible shame and guilt because she felt like she should have seen the signs. She should have done something more. What if? It took her months before she could tell her children how their father passed away. She has absolutely no idea that he was going to die as a result of suicide, and the family's blaming her for the death. Folks, these stories are heartbreaking, yet they're true. And they're unfortunately heard regularly from families. We take the time to listen to them. It is absolutely heartbreaking. And the sad reality is that they find themselves at risk. They're rejected by their own family, their partner's family. They're experiencing guilt, shame, and an overwhelming grief. They even develop PTSD. I used the Mates in Construction intervention model, and I showed you this on a regular basis for both TPD cases and for families on death claims. Mates in Construction are an absolute gem in my eyes to help. Without a doubt, I call them up. I've got someone at risk, and they're there to help. While we can't take away their pain, we can work to prevent the flow-on effects that suicide brings. I'd like to leave you with some things to consider. Who fills the void for this ripple effect? Anybody have an answer? Who fills that void? And what as an industry, can we do to prevent it? Together, we have enough resources in this room to be able to tap these resources and come to some solutions. One of the things that we're going to do at BusQ that we've put in place is called KIT. Keep in touch. Keep in touch with those families who's lost someone as a result of suicide to prevent them from doing the same thing. That's not just my responsibility because I work in this industry and because that's what my job is. Folks, it's my responsibility as a human being. I have a responsibility to help those people. So we're going to keep touch with them 3 months, 6 months, however long it takes to keep in touch and make sure that they're okay. I thank you for the time that you've taken to listen to me. I know that as a group that we can do something about this problem. Thank you.
It's powerful stuff, isn't it? It's interesting that keep in touch. We're listening to Jill Fisher work with us yesterday from Standby, and Sally, and they're saying that that bereavement and grief from suicide, it's not just a 3 months or 6 months. It can actually be intergenerational, and even simple things like keeping in touch can work, can't it? I mean, you don't need any special training to keep in touch. It's good stuff.